Valencia, it's the second race of the weekend from the second race weekend of 2013, the standalone race at Valencia, because Monte Carlo, where they normally would be supporting Formula One alongside GP2 and Porsche Super Cup, was an event that GP3 didn't attend. So here we have as an addition the Valencia round, and already we've seen a superb opening race of the weekend, which was won in comfortable style in the end by Conor Daly, the young American, taking a lights to flag victory, but under pressure in the early stages of the race from his Argentinian teammate Faccio Regalia. And this is what the grid looks like. The reverse grid, so from 8th to 1st reverse. Robert Vizoiu from Romania takes pole ahead of Arovino, who won in Barcelona in the reverse grid race there. Theo Elenas, who was championship leader, just been usurped by Conor Daly. Then Sainz, Viat, Corjus, Regalia and Daly, the winner of race 1, ahead of Brits, Dino Zamparelli, Jack Harvey, Melville McKee and Nick Yellerly, who was the star of race 1, coming from the very back of the grid up to 12th. Patrick Niederhauser, second in the championship at the starter today from Switzerland, ahead of his compatriot Alex Fontana. Venturini, Zonzini, Josh Webster in the 9 group car, ahead of Jimmy Eriksson, Lewis Williamson, Ryan Cullen, and then a drive-through penalty for Patrick Kojala for a flag infringement meant he dropped down to 21st, and then the other drivers did not finish. A collision between Adeli Fong and David Fumanelli, which was decided by the officials that was the fault of Adeli Fong, meant that he had been given a 10 grid penalty and put to the very, very back of the grid. So we look at Conor Daly. As we said, an absolutely superb performance. He took a very impressive pole position in race 1 by just under 0.3 of a second in the morning qualifying session, or the afternoon qualifying session rather, on the Saturday. A 2-day event here in Valencia rather than the usual 3-day event, so no free practice on a Friday. It was a free practice session Saturday morning that Kevin Corjus was quickest at, and then qualifying in the afternoon. Faccio Regalia, his first podium finish in GP3. Now, for joining me, Simon Hill, in the commentary position is a young man who has been racing in Formula 3 this year and last year, currently for the Prima Power team, the FIA European Formula 3 Championship, a race winner recently at Brands Hatch, the 2011 British Formula Renault champion. Delighted to be joined by Alex Lynn. Now, here's a man that you know from your racing experience, Theo Elenas.
Yeah, no, Theo, I think he's going to be a strong force to be reckoned with in this race. He starts in on P3. I think he's got the pace to win this race, and it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on at the start. I think the other main contender is going to be Arovino to win this race. He made a storming start in the reverse grid race in Barcelona, and I think if we can produce the same kind of results, we could see either these two winning the race. I'm not sure if Robert Vizoiu is going to be strong enough to take the win, but it'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah, Vizoiu even pulled off a fabulous move to get past Dino Zamparelli into 8th position. And with that, obviously got himself the reverse grid pole. Points not quite the same as for the feature race that we've already had today, so the winner will take 15 points, going down to 1 point for 8th position, as opposed to the Formula 1 style 25 points for a win through to 10th position that we normally get for the main event. So Vizoiu, just 17 years old, from Romania, has been dovetailing this with the campaign in the AutoGP series for the Zytec engine X-A1GP cars. Started racing in Formula Abarth in Italy when he was just 15 years old and won some races there, moving into GP3 last year and showed a fair strong turn of pace. And as you can see, an interested crowd here at Valencia. Lots of motorsport going on in Spain, actually. Got MotoGP, you've got this, and they've also got the GT Open races at Jerez. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting, as you quite rightly said, to see whether Vino can do what he did in the reverse grid race in Barcelona and get it done, or whether Theo Elenas is going to be able to come through, or has Vizoiu got enough in there? Certainly, the MW Arden cars were the quickest cars in race 1.
Yeah, MW Arden came on really strong in that race. It was quite interesting to see if they'd have been able to carry on that form. In Barcelona, they struggled with tyre wear quite heavily in race 1. And then I think the team's obviously learned quite a lot from the not really mid-season, but after the first round break test at the Hungaroring. So it'll be interesting to see. Maybe he's got the pace. He made it certainly an important move to pass Dino Zamparelli for 8th place to get the reverse grid pole position. So it's gonna be interesting.
So 18 laps of the circuit Ricardo Torno, over 30 degrees of temperature, over 40 degrees of track temperature even. Each of the teams have been allocated 3 new sets of Pirelli slick tyres for the race weekend. Some of the drivers holding back a new set for the first race, including Faccio Regalia, who looked very, very strong at the beginning of the event. Being in the first race. That's the points now. Conor Daly moving ahead of Ellinas after his win. We also got the 4 points that you get for pole position. But the extra couple of points are being pushed away from the grid. He's Adderley Fong. Well, he's had a pretty tough day of it already so far. He actually caused a red flag a couple of minutes from the end of qualifying as well. And that kind of threw things out a little bit, Alex, didn't it? Because there was a few drivers that had saved their second set of tyres for quite a late run. And arguably one of the drivers that perhaps was most hurt by that was Carlos Sainz Jr.
Yeah, I think Carlos really got hampered in that red flag that happened in the last 2 minutes. He was really on a storming lap when that happened. And certainly when he came back out for one last flying lap, he went from 20th to P9, not far off of the fastest time either. So bit of a shame, but Carlos has been fighting his way back this morning, and he's definitely got a good chance of winning this race. Being in 4th, it's not exactly impossible.
Nick Yellerly there in the number 8 Carlin car. Well, Trevor Carlin reckons he would have won that race if he'd have been able to start from the P3 that he qualified on. The reason he was at the back of the grid was that he had a bit of an off during the session in qualifying, and it bent the floor, and that meant that when the mandatory post qualifying scrutineering checks took place, the one side of the floor was slightly lower than it should have been, and it failed the ride height check. And I think that was pretty harsh, but unfortunately it's one of those rules is rules kind of thing, Alex, wasn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately so, but that's the game you play with these. You're playing it close to the floor as much as you can to generate more downforce, and that's just one of those unfortunate things, I suppose.
Now, you noticed when we were looking at one of the close-up shots in qualifying yesterday, that little strip that runs along the side of the side pod there, helping to this. Adderley looks like him and his status car are going to be out, unfortunately, or if they are going to start, it'll be from the pit lane. But that little strip along the side, whether that actually helps to create any kind of additional maybe downforce perhaps underneath the car? Yeah,
absolutely. That rubber strip on the side of the floor, I think, is an extra way of generating downforce that all of the cars have just from the manufacturer Dallara. It's an easy way of creating more downforce, and sort of like the old Formula 1 days when they had the sliding skirts, as we just see Conor Daly taking up his grid position in P8. Yeah,
Conor's old man Derek Daly would have, of course, been a generation of Grand Prix drivers that experienced those sliding skirts from when he would have been driving the Tyrrell 009 and 010 in 1979 and 1980, the Candy Tyrrells. Who can forget him flying over the top of his teammate Jean-Pierre Jarier at the start of the Monaco Grand Prix in 1980. And actually, Conor emulated that last year with a pretty spectacular exit from the Monaco GP3 race, going down to the chicane coming out of the tunnel. So
Theo Alanas looking very far away from the edge of his grid box for some reason. I don't really know as the lights come on.
Green flag waves, red lights are on. On the left it's Vizoyu, on the right is Fino. And it is Vizoyu who gets a superb start. I think Alanas maybe has got a good start as well, as immediately the two MW Arden cars behind are Vaya and Carlos Sainz Jr. instantly trying to scrap amongst them. Vino goes defensive. Down the inside though goes one of the Arden cars rather. Couldn't quite see which one of them it was. Plenty of scrapping going on through the midfield. We've already seen some dramas in the first race and a bit of a lock-up there from Daly trying to get past his teammate Regalia, but it all looks like hopefully they managed to have been sensible on the first lap.
Yeah, that looks like Carlos Sainz has just taken P3 away from Theo Alanas. Robert Vizio with a fantastic start. Certainly surprised me they got a storming getaway.
Yeah, and Fuminelli, well, his day goes from bad to worse. Ironically, it was Adderley Fong and David Fuminelli that tangled on the first lap of race runners to the inside. Is that Ericsson? I think it was, having a look down the inside, but not quite being able to make that one stick. These early lap or two is when you do tend to see him a little bit more of a chance when people are trying to push to overtake.
Yeah, Robert Vizio just gapping the whole field already, storming first lap. Aravagno is going to be chasing him the whole way and doesn't want to let him get away. Theo Alanas looks like he's all ready to make an attack back on Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, Jack Harvey now under a little bit of pressure, I think. Was that either McKee or Niederhauser, I think, just immediately behind him. But Vizoyu, well, we weren't quite sure whether he was going to have enough pace in it. We mentioned earlier that the MW Arden cars is a big fan of cars in the background, getting almost 4 abreast. The MW Arden cars were the quickest cars on race pace in race 1. It was Carlos Sainz Jr. who set the fastest lap on a mid-124, a couple of seconds away from the pole time to be expected, and used tyres are a much hotter part of the day. But at the moment it does look like, certainly in the early lap, it's a very strong first lap by Vizoyu. Connor Daly, the fastest first sector. So clearly the ART man, he's already looked, has he got past Regalia? No, he hasn't. I think he's dropped back away from Regalia, maybe to ensure that he has some clean air. Now, you had an interesting conversation with Nick Cassidy, who, of course, we were maybe expecting to see as Jimmy Eriksson and Josh Webster get side by side, and just behind that, I think that was perhaps Lewis Williamson having a little look as well. But you were talking to Nick Cassidy, you noticed a couple of interesting things about tyre wear on those drivers.
Yeah, certainly it looked like that Connor Daly had a much more balanced car in race 1 than Regalia. I think Regalia was suffering a lot more from understeer from the start of the session, because Connor Daly ran 3 new sets of tyres in qualifying, and Regalia only ran 2. So obviously that's the reason why he was so close to him at the start. But Tio Enlace, again, is all over the back of Carlos Sainz. It'll be interesting to see actually what tyres he was running. It's a shame we don't know.
Well, interesting there. Vizoyu sets the fastest lap of the race, 1:25.5, 2/10 quicker than Vainio. So certainly Vizoyu looks like he's dealing with Liechtenstein. Well, his car didn't get off the grid in race 1, problem in race 2. So sadly for Eric Liechtenstein, along with Fuminelli and Fong, just a very difficult weekend for them. No points at all. Well, this is where it's going to get interesting. Carlos Sainz now sets the fastest sector 1. It's a very short first sector, just over 19 seconds. It's only really the first sort of 3 turns, isn't it?
Yeah, just the turn 1, which is a very high speed corner. And I think obviously we saw Carlos Sainz go quickest through that first sector, and he's benefiting from not following a car closely. So he's able to go through turn 1 at a high speed and just, yeah, have the fast sector 1.
Elenis there just dropping away a little bit from Sainz. Meanwhile, Sainz, because of those that first sector being so quick, has maybe started to take a little bit of time back out of Haro Vainio. Championship wires, Sainz is down in 10th position at the moment on 12 points. There is Dino Zamparelli, a young Bristolian driver who has looked very strong this weekend, certainly looked very at home in the Marussia Manor car. No doubt that he will continue to make progress as the year unfolds. Great opportunity for Dino to really establish himself in international motorsport. There's confirmation now, the gap's halved that time round. It was 4/10 quicker was Vainio than Vizoyu that time through. Sainz, Elenis Fayat, Korshus, Regalia and Daly pretty much as per. And then Zamparelli, McKee, Niederhauser now. Yellowly's dropped back a little bit. He started 12th, he's down to 14th. Likewise, Jack Harvey has dropped back behind both Niederhauser and Fontana. So I think that was a bit of a scrappy first couple of laps. And the rest of the grid as perhaps we would have expected. Interesting is to see whether that man, Connor Daly, can start to make some progress as the race unfolds. What tyre options do you think they've gone for in terms of where they're at? Just the second set of qualifying tyres you'd think that you're probably using?
Most likely either the set that you've done the least amount of laps on. Maybe you've done a short run in Q1, and then maybe a longer run in the second run in qualifying. And you probably would have kept your best set for race 1, or it depends on where you're starting. If you'd have gone to try and get the reverse grid pole, or if you're looking to score more points in the second race, then you obviously would have saved your best tyres for this one. But again, Tio Enlace really close behind Carlos Sainz. He looks like he's got the measure of him, but it's going to be difficult to see if he can overtake.
Yeah, it's going to be very tough. It has been shown, but Vizoyu was actually one of the only drivers right at the front that really did make some progress. Sainz and Fayat made a little bit of progress because it was a bit scrappy on the first couple of laps, but certainly after that, once it settled down and once everyone was starting to fight the progressively degrading tyre situation. Now there's a medium compound tyre that Pirelli have issued to everybody, and as you said earlier, it's 3 sets of tyres for the weekend, so that tyre